Life is good. We're safe, and at times it's very relaxing. That's what's so great about this country. But there's a reason all of what I just said is true. Some take it for granted, others could care less. Me? I thank 'em every chance I get. This sea of white headstones can be found in most major cities in America. I look out at a view like this and can't help but think of all those men who fought through hell. Some died on foreign soil, some came home. But every one of these headstones has a story to tell, with no one to tell it. All of these stories will go unheard for the rest of time. It's quiet here, but these headstones scream a million words for those who will listen. These were my heroes growing up. They didn't wear spandex, a cape. Hell, their underwear was underneath their pants. If it wasn't for the greatest generation, we would all be speaking Japanese or German. That's why telling the stories of those we have left is so beyond important to me. We are losing these heroes too rapidly. So my mission is to sit down with as many as I can, to let these unsung heroes have their chance to be heard, before it's too late.
So where were you when you heard about Pearl Harbor being attacked?
When I first heard it, I was working for a Zell's gas station
Okay.
on Ocean and American Avenue. Long Beach Boulevard at that time was called American Avenue. And I worked for a Zell's filling station when the war started. And then later on, halfway afterwards, I started working at Hilton Hotel before I joined the Army. And I enlisted for the paratroops, which was very unusual. They told me I'd have to enlist for the infantry first and transfer. And then when I got to LA, they says, "You enlisted for the infantry?" Because if you enlisted for the infantry, you could go into anything you wanted, And I said, "Well, really, I enlisted for the paratroops." He says, but I said, they said you have to go in the infantry first. He said, "Not anymore." He says, he signed, "Go to the front of the line." And I went to the front of the line, and within a week I was on my way to Toccoa, Georgia. It was pretty much a glory thing, I think, and it paid $50 extra. Jump pay was $50 extra a month, which when in those days, basic pay was only $21. So an extra $50 a month really helped. Officers got 100, which why the hell they got 100 I have never figured out, because it was us that was jumping with equipment, they jumped with a carbine. In Toccoa, Georgia, we were all really green as grass, of course, but they did have a 35-foot tower that we would practice jumping from. They would run down on a cable, and there was even a few people flunked out on that because they just couldn't get out of that 30-foot tower, But most of our training was all runs and marches and stuff like that. And then when we left Toccoa, Georgia, the first battalion went to Benning on a train, all the way to, from Toccoa to Benning. And then the second battalion marched from Toccoa to Atlanta, which was about 130 miles. And so naturally the 3rd Battalion had to better do that more, do more than the 2nd Battalion. So we had to march from Atlanta to Benning, which was 150. And so just the way it goes. We were unfortunately called the walking, talking, jumping 506 because none of us had jumped yet. You know, we were getting all kinds of notoriety in the newspapers and everything like that as paratroops because we'd taken the training at Toccoa, but we hadn't jumped yet. And so from all the guys that was already jumped and stuff like that, that had just went through the regular jump school, you know, in classes, we were always there was non-jump, walking, talking, non-jumping 506. But we did have the best record of anybody that ever went through Benning as a group. And we actually were the first group that ever went through Benning, I think, as a group instead of just classes. The first jump was just routine because there was so much build up to it. In other words, everybody was absolutely ready to jump and been terribly disappointed if we didn't, in fact. And so it was very, very easy. We did get surprised with the opening shock on some of it. If you didn't go out the door properly and you didn't make it, wasn't in the right position or something, you could take a real hard opening shock when the chute opened, because it opened in the slipstream of the plane, and so it opened with quite a shock. Well, we were all very proud. Of course, our captain pinned all our wings on for us, unless someone had a father or something that had jumped before. But in my day, there wasn't very many fathers that had jumped before because we were pretty early in it, you know. Until we went to New York and started out, we didn't know whether we'd be going to Japan or to Europe, you know, to England. But as it was, like I say, it was 11 days, I think, going over. And on the ship, it was distasteful as hell. Everybody that was down below decks, people were sick, it stunk and all that. And food was lousy on that British ship. Unless you got in a poker game down there, and then you could buy a pretty good sandwich. But everything went pretty well across. We didn't get any real bad scares or anything from German submarines. And a couple British Spitfires met us just before we got to Liverpool, which made us feel, well, actually before that, just off the Irish coast, and made everybody feel a lot more secure, you know. As I say, my battalion went to Exeter, England. It's a very south part of England, and we were there put in, you know, restricted. We couldn't leave that camp for any reason, and all were looking at sand tables and where we were going and showing us, looking at German weapons and firing them and stuff like that to get used in case we captured some. And they even had people going in among us that looked like Germans, so we'd get used to looking for them, you know. And it was all routine, more or less. We'd all look forward to it. Lieutenant Colonel over our battalion made about the nicest prayer, though, of any of the ones that we've read about, really. Colonel Wolverton asked us to join him in a prayer for our success of the mission. He says, I want you to kneel down and look up, not down. And then he started, dear God, in a few short hours we'll be in battle with the enemy. We do not join battle afraid or ask for favors or indulgence. We only ask, if you would, use us as your instrument for freeing the world. Dear God, we don't know what our fate might be. We only ask that If die we must, we'll die as men would die, without complaining or pleading, safe in the feelings that we have done our best for what we know is right. Dear God, watch over us, our families, watch over us in the fire ahead, and with us now as we pray to you. Move out. Colonel Wolverton, after his prayer and everything, he never hit the ground. He landed in a tree and they cut his throat. Which everybody, when they heard about that, was heartbroken. I was a machine gunner in Normandy, so it made it extra hard. We had not only everything to carry, but a box of ammunition and a machine gun, and they had to actually help us on the plane. With all the gear we had on, you know, we had food for days. We had everything you would need when you got on the ground, and we had to pack every bit of it because we had no way of knowing when we'd be resupplied or anything. And so we all had to be helped on the plane. Nobody could, if you got sat down on the ground, you couldn't get up. We had at least 100 pounds on us to carry, plus our own weight, and some maybe more than that. I've never made a scientific to know just exactly how much equipment we had, but we had not only our equipment, we had landmines, extra landmines and stuff like that we had to carry too. It was still light when it took off because it was on, you know, that time of the year in Europe, it stays light for a really long time. But I don't know, there wasn't that much extra tension. Everybody had looked forward to it for so long and everything. And on the plane, most everybody was smoking. I didn't smoke much, but everybody was more or less saying prayers and stuff, you know, knowing what was coming. And I did ask God to forgive me for whatever I might have to do, or the enemy for what he might have to do. And asked that I wouldn't show how afraid I was, and that I wouldn't let my country or my family down. Yeah, the first flat was over an island we went. I forget what the island was on the way over, but there was a few firing from there, but not much. But when we got over Normandy, it was so intense that you almost swear you could walk down on the tracers. And what surprised me the most, and I couldn't get over how many different colored tracers there was. They must have used a different color for every caliber so that they knew which gun was doing what. I have no idea about that. But there was so many different colors of the tracers coming up at us. And of course, a lot of them was exploding near the planes and stuff. And you could see other planes being hit, you know, and going down even. And so all we could do was pray to get the hell out of that plane, because we could see them getting hit, and if you got hit, you would have finished, you know. In other words, my company lost 3 planes on the jump over Normandy, and there was only 3 of the guys that actually got back to us out of one of those planes, and the one that was captured. So 4 of them got out of one of those planes. We could hardly wait to get out of the plane, so it was just hoping that we wouldn't be delayed and anything like that. And the plane, there was a lot of fire hitting the planes. You could hear it coming through the wings and stuff like that, and you never knew whether we would be next, or, you know, the plane would get shot down or not. And most of the planes had Bangalore torpedoes and stuff like that under them. that they were supposed to drop, you know, for us to get under wire and stuff with. And if anything hit those, the whole plane would go up, you know. So it was a hell of a lot of tension until you could get out of that plane. When we hit the ground, there was supposed to be a bugle and a blue light and stuff for us to assemble on. But when I got to the ground, there was no blue light, there was no bugle, and I was struggling to get out of the parachute harness. The harness that we had very hard fasteners to unfasten. It fit tight, and you had to push back on the thing and unfasten them, you know, and everything. So it was an effort to get out of the chute. And the only guy I seen was my first sergeant that was fairly close to me. Of course, I didn't know who he was in the dark, but we had crickets that they had given us. It was what? And then it was, that was the answer. But it didn't take the damn Germans long to get a hold of one. Yeah, and so I clicked it, and then he clicked back, and then we found out that, you know, but he was the only one that I met that night, which was really unusual because Jim Brown jumped right in front of me, and Young jumped right behind me, and I never seen neither one of those for days. And so anyway, the first sergeant had broke his ankle, and so I kind of stayed with him and helping him along, you know, giving him some support on the side that, you know, that he couldn't step. And my leg pack had kept going. We had never jumped a leg pack before in training, and we never had any problems with losing equipment or anything the whole time we were in training. But the leg packs on the opening shock just tore loose and just kept going. We never seen them again. Anyway, so first ammunition bundle I saw, I tried to get more ammunition in case when I found out Jim that we'd have ammunition in case he didn't lose it. So anyway, I ducked down and a bullet went right so close to my head that I could feel it. I didn't only hear it, I could feel it. But thank God he didn't shoot again. Anyway, I got 2 boxes of ammunition and got right back with Garrison. And we were going along the hedgerow at that night, and just got to the end of the hedgerow, and we couldn't keep up with the other guys that we were trying to keep up with. We didn't know who they were or anything at the time. They were just other paratroopers that we knew were on our side, so we were keeping with them. And they got quite a little bit ahead of us out in an open field, and a flare went up and caught them all in the bright light of that flare. And a German machine gun opened up on them, and you couldn't really tell how many was hit, of course, because naturally as soon as the machine gun opened up, they all hit the ground. But I know there was quite a few of them must have been hit. But fortunately, the Sergeant Garrison and I had left the hedgerow, and we were standing there immobile, you know, because you were supposed to stand absolutely still if if a flare went up. So we had to stand there in all that light, hoping to God they didn't see us. But we were had the hedgerow behind us, so evidently they couldn't see us. And we never did know how many of those guys got hit the next day. But in the next, when it got light, the first sergeant asked me to reconnoiter our hedgerow and see if there was any friendlies near us. And I got down, I went down to the far end of it, the way we had come, and there was a lieutenant there with a big radio and stuff, and about 4 or 5 enlisted men with him. And one of the enlisted men had been hit, but not seriously. And I said to this lieutenant, I says, First Sergeant was worried about we were getting so much fire that we might order artillery, somebody might order artillery. He says, don't worry about that, I'm the artillery. I got the radio to the cruiser. And I'm not about to order any artillery. And I'm not about to go anywhere either. So I went back and told Garrison what this lieutenant had said. And he says, oh, he can go to hell. So he gave me his maps and everything like that and told me to make contact with the troops so we could see out beyond us about 500 yards, and the people that were moving in the open, and they weren't catching much fire or nothing. They were way out, and they were right in the open field, just moving. And so Garrison gave me all the books and maps and stuff he had come for the company and stuff, and so I took off running across this field, and a German opened up on me, and I could feel the bullets go right past me and see them hitting right in front of me. And so I seen a low spot, and I hit the low spot and laid in that for a while. And they kept dropping, shooting at me, and they would hit on the high side on one side and hit on the high side on the other side. And I thought, well, it won't be long till he drops one in here. And so I decided I only needed 1 box of ammunition and left one of the boxes of ammunition there because I also had that stuff of Garrison's to carry. So I went the rest of the way across the field and drove into a ditch full of water, which protected me from the waste, from most of my body in the water from anything the guy was shooting. And so then I got out of that and I made contact with the troops that I seen, and found out they were 501, and I met a guy from our platoon, and so I asked Marion, his name was Marion Hove, he was a rifleman from our platoon, and I asked him if he would go with me to get Garrison. And very reluctantly, we went back to help Garrison across that field. And we got to the edge of the woods by the water where I had went in, and here come Garrison across the field, and he could just barely walk with his foot the way it was, and no one they even took a shot at him or nothing. And we were so glad to see him because we sure didn't want to get across that field and take what I was taking. And anyway, we got him to the 501 medics, and then we just figured they might as well join the 501, and they were taking the locks on the Dove River. We knew how to get to the bridges, but we assumed that they had probably had plenty of people at the bridges, and so we were stayed with a lot of company, friendly company naturally. And so we were right along the river, the Dove River, and right near the locks. And there was a guy on the locks that was hit. And we had an awful lot of fire coming in. We thought it was mortars. And we thought, my God, how many mortars must they have? You know, I mean, it was just boom, 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 boom like that, you know, the whole length of the damn river. And Hove says, God, I'm a hell of a soldier. And I says, why? He says, I'm scared. I said, you sure as hell don't think you're alone, do you? And Hove and I went up to help him, and he was hit in the face. And I hadn't seen anybody shot up that bad, and I wasn't really much help. I got sick, and Hove had fixed him up. We gave him most of our sulfur pad, and we even give him more water because sulfur made you thirsty. And anyway, then for some reason, I have no idea, the whole idea was to take, I guess, for the 501 to take the locks, and here we're on the locks, and we went back to the same place in the river where we were, thinking that everybody had went ahead of us. And so I said to Hove, I said, I suppose we can get hit here just as anywhere, as well as anywhere else. And we thought that they'd went ahead, so we knew that the field wasn't mine because it had cattle in it. So we went up over the edge of the river and started running across this big field that was full of cattle. And they opened up on us with a 40 millimeter. That's what it had been hitting. They had been shooting at us on the river, but we thought it was mortars. And they killed cattle all around us. And we just hit a low spot and stayed there. And a little while later, we found a German foxhole. We knew it was German foxhole because no one else would have had time to dig one. It was really a fancy. So we stayed in that till it was dark, because every time we'd move, the damn 40 millimeter would take a few more shots. So someone come up and asked us who we were and what we were doing there and all that. So I told him I was a machine gunner, and the guy gave the machine gun, and I told him that Hove was my assistant gunner because I didn't want him to take him away from me. Have someone I knew close to me. So they give us a machine gun and told us where they wanted us to set it up and stuff along the hedgerow just to the south of the locks along the hedgerow there. And so we set it up, waiting. They told us to expect them to counterattack first thing in the morning. And so we stayed there, and fortunately there was no counterattack, but we didn't know when it might come and stuff. So I thought I might take a shot at that 40 millimeter that had been really pestering us, just because we knew approximately where it was. And if we had to attack, I wanted to be able to put some fire that way. So I pulled the trigger and it went bang. No more. I'll have to check it out, I guess. I found out it must have fallen in the river, and all they did is clean up the outside of it before they give it to me. And of course, the first thing is they teach you in the service is to check your weapon, which I sure as hell hadn't done. And so I had to pull it all apart and clean it and make sure it shot the next time we needed it. And then a C-47 flew over, I don't know what for, and that 40 millimeter opened up on the bellway. Someone had called fire on that 40 millimeter, and it looked like they moved the woods. There was so much fire, naval fire that went there, and then the C-47 flew over, and I'd be damned if he didn't open up on it. And so I opened up on the at that time, the machine gun was working again, and I don't know if it was a mistake or not, because he quit shooting at the C-47 and laid a whole row of airburst right over the top of where we were. And anyway, before that day ended, they moved me down next to a road across the street, moved me south, further south along a road next to a house, across the street from a house. And they hadn't moved us till it got dark, of course. And so that we sat up there along beside this house, and a JU-8 came over. He couldn't have been 100 feet off the ground. And I know I could have hit him, but I figured maybe he just wasn't looking for our position or something, and then if I'd opened up, all I'd done is give our position away. So he flew back to Germany, but no hindrance from me. And a little later in the night, there was a whole bunch of people coming in across the field. And I challenged them, and then we had, people that was separated from us, and stuff. So I challenged them again, and they all went down. So then I knew they were Germans. And so I opened up with a few rounds, and the guy came in, and he had something in his hand. And of course at night I couldn't see what he had in his hand, and I kept telling him to drop it. I thought it could be a bomb or something, And finally a lieutenant come out of that house and told me to let him come in. And so I had no idea what he had in his hand. And would you believe, maybe 20 years later, or something like that, I was talking to a guy in San Fernando Valley that was at one of our airborne gatherings, and he said he was in the 501, and then of course I told him I was fought with the 501 for the first 3 days, and about the crowd that came in, and he says, "You know what he had in his hand?" I said, "No, I had no way of knowing. I couldn't leave the machine gun." He says, "His helmet." I said, "How the hell do you know it was his helmet?" He says, "I'm the medic that fixed him up." And that's really a coincidence. So the bullet had hit right in the middle of his helmet and just scarfed his head over the top, so he had no idea that he had in his hand. In other words, I was just wasting time yelling at him. But anyway, it was such a coincidence, to me, the medic that fixed him up and everything. But then later, after that, got daylight, I think it was on about the third day, some P-51s came in and bombed the bridges where I knew I was supposed to be. So I went to this lieutenant from the 501, and I told him that I was leaving. My outfit was obviously in trouble, or they wouldn't have had to bomb the bridges. And he told me if I left that gun, he'd have me shot for desertion of the enemy. And I says, "Which way is the damned enemy?" Here we are way behind the lines and everything, and he's going to have me shot for the desertion of the face of the enemy. So Hove and I both left, and obviously he didn't shoot. We got back, we got to the bridges just before our outfit had been relieved by the 327th. But on the way to the bridges, we met all these, come across all these Germans that were just shot to dog rags. I mean, and we said, what in the world happened? They were marching these captured Germans down the road in a group. And the Germans opened up on them with their own 98s and just blew them all to dog rags. And they looked like something out of Gone with the Wind. They were laying all over the place. We had no medicine to give them or anything, you know. And it was heartbreaking even to see the Germans shot up that bad. But anyway, fortunately, we got to the company and everything. Just as they were moving out, we were able to join them and go with them, you know, when they left. You never slept. I tried not to. Of course, you always. And actually, talking about sleep, on the first night in Normandy, we just absolutely could not stay awake. So, you know, from the time we jumped till daylight, we could hardly stay awake because they had given us these seasick pills or something like that, so we wouldn't be sick in the plane. And everybody was it just knocked everybody out. Story about Chuck Abeta. He hit an officer someplace when he was drunk. And he was too stupid. It was Lieutenant King, and Lieutenant King would have forgot about it if he had apologized. Go to hell, he says. He went to a prison camp. So anyway, he didn't get to jump with us in Normandy. When we were leaving Normandy, he was in an outfit coming in when we were going out, and was just like this. Hi, Chuck, goodbye. Isn't that amazing? I don't know where in England we landed, but we were put on trains, and we got back to Ramsbury, and everything we left behind, somebody had pilfered. We got nothing that we had left behind. And then there's meeting the new troops coming in to replace all of our losses. And like I say, my company lost 2/3 the first day, but a lot of those were captured, a lot of them were wounded, and some of them got back to us in England. So I would say maybe only 6 or 8, something like that, got back to the company and the battalion. You know. And I walked in battalion headquarters, and by this time I had transferred to S3 by ex-company commander in Normandy, and went to S3, and he took me with him. And there was a guy in the office there, and I asked him when he got back, and he says, I've never been here before. And I said, well, where are you from? He says, Long Beach. I said, really? Here he went to school with me. And he had stayed and graduated, and that consequently why he was so much later again to us. And anyway, we ended up getting all set to go to Holland. And at that time, I was in S3. So I was making the sand tables and all that for everybody. And for the Holland deal, we had so many false alarms. We'd go, first we were supposed to jump at some ammunition dump in France. Then the next one was Torquay, France. And the next one was Liège, France. And we had to make sand tables for every single one of those different objectives that we were supposed to go. And then they would change it again. And then, of course, the last one was Zon, Holland, which was maybe 5 or 10 miles out of Eindhoven. And anyway, it was a real open fields, and everything was really wide open. And in Holland we jumped in the daytime, and we had all kinds of fighter support and stuff. But we did have 2 or 3 planes shot down on the field. But actually, it was absolutely a parade yard jump compared to Normandy. And so it was pretty simple assembling and everything. Everything went really, really well on the assembly. And we even had Dutch people come out, at least one Dutchman came out with a 2-wheel cart and a horse, and he was helping us carry the equipment bundles. We'd put the equipment bundles in his cart and helping us haul them off the field. And so we had a lot of help from the Dutch. And they were also telling us where the Germans were and things like that that helped us immensely. But our 1st battalion was supposed to take the bridge on the Wilhelmina Canal, which was our objective in Holland, the first objective. But the Germans blew it before they ever got to it. We didn't get a chance to even get to it. And so the 2nd battalion had a slow crossing. They finally rigged up kind of a halfway bridge on little over some boats and stuff that they'd put in the channel, and we managed to get over that before nightfall. So we slept the first night on the south side of the bridges, and the south side of the bridge on the Zahn side, on the Eindhoven side of the bridge. And first thing in the morning, kind of called and said up front and everything, and wanted us to start out. Says, "Come on," you know. And so we started out, and it was our job to keep H Company and I Company, you know, not together, but knowing what was going on. So we were right on the road just before we got to a church, and Kylie told me to go back and get a hold of H Company and get a hold of Horton and tell Horton to tell H Company to get the hell up online or we'd get flanked. So I went back just a few hundred yards, and there was Jim Brown that used to be on the machine gun with me with a 537 radio. I said to Jim, I says, "Jim, get a hold of H Company and tell him Lieutenant Horton said to get the hell up online, that we get flagged." And Jim did, just like Major Horton had told him. Said Major Horton said to get the hell up online, you're not getting that much fire. So it was kind of humorous because I never seen Major Horton or a damn thing. And while I'm talking to him, a bullet tore that radio right out of his hand. And actually, I think he was talking it was right up by his face. And he just looked down and he says, "That's no good anymore." And unsung his rifle and went his way, you know. And so I got back to Nye and told him I took care of it. At the same time, I'm across the road from him, and I told him, "Get down, you know, you got to get yourself killed." And he said, "If I get down, so will everyone else." And a bullet hit him in the throat. And I thought the bullet came from the church. I still do. And anyway, I put a few rounds up into the bell tower, and any other window that I could see facing us. And then I run into this little front yard of the house that was there, kind of like a little patio that was hedge all around it, and Beam was there. And I said, he used to be my platoon leader, you know, when I was in I Company. And I says, Beam, can I join I Company? He said, you've always been with I Company, he said. And I don't know whether I told him Kylie was dead or he already knew it. But at any rate, I went up to follow, and I thought I'd get to get to that church and see if I could get up to that sniper. And so I got to the door of the church, and I tried to open it, and I couldn't get it open. So I put about 3 rounds into the latch and hit it with my shoulder and landed on my ass in the street. The door opens out. Anyway, I never got in the church. So I went just up a few 100 yards up the street from there, and a German machine gun opened up on me. And I stepped in a brick doorway of a house there, figuring he could wear that machine gun out because he couldn't hit me in that doorway. And then an 88 come in and hit across the street from me and blew the whole front of the building out. And Copperstone was standing on the south side of that building. And he says, that was pretty close, wasn't it? I said, yeah, close enough. And as I understand, no one's seen him after that. I don't know if it was true or not, but because I wasn't there that much longer. And then the next one come in and hit me in the leg, and of course knocked me into the street. And I just tried to get back, afraid that that machine gunner would kill me once I got out, you know, it was open in the open. But he never shot at me again. But I crawled back into that door as best I could. And then another one came in and hit me in the shoulder. Well, now I got one leg out and my right arm out. So I'm thinking that wasn't a very safe place to stay. So I figured I pushed myself up the street back toward the church. And glad, I don't know how I didn't get cut. I'm dragging the rifle with my only good hand and pushing myself with my only good foot. And glass is piling all up behind me, you know, from pushing it against it, because it all come out of the windows out. But anyway, I didn't even get cut, believe it or not. If I did, I didn't notice it. But anyway, I got to the next house, and a Dutchman opened the door. His name, I found out later, was Pete Klopmacher. And he pulled me in the house. And I was no more in that house. And Bill Kidder, our medic, got to me, and Jim Brown and Joe Madonna. All 3 of them got to me as soon as I got into, you know, out of that street. And Bill Kidder says, you're out of this war. And then he took a look at my leg. And so I gave Madonna the 45 I had taken off Lieutenant Christensen in Normandy. And because Jim already had one, his dad had sent him. And so I'm in there, and they bring another guy in, they scream. Another Wall was hitting the eye, and he wasn't making any noise at all, it was Sergeant Wall. And but they brought in somebody else screaming like hell. And I said to Bill, I said, God, is he gut shot? Bill said, he's only shot through the thigh and it didn't even hit the bone. So we're there, wouldn't you believe they load that crybaby on the Jeep with me. They put me on the back of a Jeep after a few hours to take me back to Zon, back across the river and everything. So they loaded me and that guy on the Jeep. And I was kind of sorry I'd give the 45 away. But anyway, we got back, took us back to Zahn, and put us in a tent. And we're in this tent, and Germans counterattacked, and ammunition is going through the tent, and we're all worried about going to lay there. We're on stretchers, of course, and figured we're never going to get out of that thing at all alive. And pretty soon, a couple of German prisoners come in and picked me up and hauled me and slid me underneath a bed in a it was a sanitarium that the monks ran, you know. And well, while we were there, the guy above me and that was in that bed handed me a spent 40mm bullet that had come clear through the ceiling and dropped on his chest. Just, it was spent, of course, but it was still hot, you know, from coming through the roof and everything, and being shot, of course, and coming through the roof. But anyway, shortly after that, things settled down and everything, and they gave me a bed to sleep in, I think, or to stay in. And so by this time they've worked over my shoulder pretty good. They've had it fixed, my shoulder and my leg pretty well. And a Catholic priest, they'd cut all my clothes off. I didn't have even my wallet. I had nothing. And a priest came in, and I had put my dog tags in my pocket. You'd think I'd known better than that after Normandy, but no, I hated stuff around my neck. And so anyway, I lost the dog tags. So he asked me, am I Catholic or Protestant or what? And I said, I'm Catholic. So he went and got a rosary, one of those old, big, thick, you know, that monks wear, kind of round, almost around their waist. You've seen them. Anyway, it was a real large rosary. And he says, I don't have the proper cross for it, but it had just a little bitty cross he'd put on it. So when they finally loaded us on a British ambulance and started taking us out of the country. And they got stopped, and it all sounded like a firefight, all kinds of ammunition going off. And we thought surely we're going to get captured by the damn Germans. And pretty soon whoever was driving the ambulance comes and opened the door, and he says, you can relax, we're just waiting for that ammunition truck to blow up. So as soon as it blew up, we could go safely past it. We went on our way to Belgium. And they put me in a British hospital in Belgium. God, you never seen so much tea in your life. Everything was tea. So anyway, they didn't do any more work on us or anything. We were just being evacuated. And so pretty soon they loaded us on another ambulance to take us to Belgium. And it got stopped anywhere, quite a few places along the way. And there was a British flyer in the ambulance with us in a blue uniform, of course. And all the Belgians thought he was a crowd. And unfortunately, he couldn't talk, and he was wounded so bad he couldn't talk, and he was blonde-haired to boot. And so they were convinced he was a German. And they would give us fruit, wine, anything we wanted, you know, in the ambulance. But they wouldn't give him anything, you know, because they thought he was a crowd. And finally, when we got to Brussels, they wouldn't unload him. And I don't know, I guess if it had been a German, he'd just died in that damn ambulance. But anyway, we finally convinced him he was British, you know, and they unloaded him. And when I entered the hospital with that rosary around my neck, you'd have thought I was the Pope. Man, I really got the attention, I'll tell you. But I was only there maybe a couple days, enough time to change the dressings and stuff like that on the wounds. And they loaded me on a plane and flew me to England. And everything went pretty well in England, and there was no more got there. And they put my leg in a traction thing with the weight hanging off the end of it. And it was kind of up in the air with a traction, and fixed my shoulder. And I don't know what it did, but the minute they fixed it, I could move it again. And so it must have been some nerve or tendon or something that was cut, you know. But I didn't have to learn to use it. The minute it was fixed, I could use it unconsciously even. And so I don't know how long I was in England in that hospital, maybe a week. And of course there was the V1s, and then finally the damn V2s coming in, which scared. We thought we'd never get down to England, you know, alive. But anyway, we had nothing hit the hospital, fortunately. And of course the nurses and everybody couldn't possibly take better care of you than they did. And anyway, they finally loaded me up and took me to a ship. It was called the, I used to remember the name of it, but right now I can't think what it was. But it was a captured German ship that we had, Larkspur, I think it was called. And it was like a palace to us. We got milk right away. We thought that was the best damn thing. You know, you'd think we'd want something different, but a glass of milk was just the best damn thing could have happened to us. And on the way back, it was really rough. We passed down below the Azores to get around the storm, and didn't really do it. But anyway, we all had the portholes open because it stunk something terrible, you know, the wounds and everything smelled so bad. And I had a porthole open, and the wave came in the porthole and damn near washed me out of bed. And of course went all over the guy underneath me. And the guy down the companionway had his open, and it did wash him out of bed. But I don't know what shape he was in, how badly wounded or anything he was. But anyway, they were quite upset, you know. The guy getting washed out of bed was pretty serious, you know. It was all serious wounds. And anyway, the very next night, calmed down a little bit, had the porthole, and I had asked a nurse for a duck. That's a urinal that looks sort of like a duck when it's sitting. So anyway, I used the duck, and then unfortunately I fell asleep and it spilled all over the poor bugger underneath me again. So I was really popular. So, but anyway, we landed in Charleston, and you're kind of out of it when you're wounded like that. Time, you know, can't tell you how long we were in Charleston. They do change the bandages and put new things, new bandages and new casts on your leg and all that kind of stuff. And then they loaded us on one of the C-54s and flew me clear to somewhere near Modesto, California. And I don't know where the airfield was near Modesto, you know, but they had to take me by ambulance to the hospital at Hammond. And they put me in a bed in that hospital. And of course started changing the taking the cast off was always very, very, very painful. And because the bone was, tibia was all shot away. And anyway, I'm in this hospital in Hammond, and I'm in a special ward because I got osteo in my leg. They call it a type of infection. And so anyway, this friend, this guy come to see me. I had never met him before, but he had been hit in Bastogne. This was quite a bit later. He had been hit in Bastogne, and his arm was in an airplane cast with a brace underneath. And come to find out, he was from I Company, and he knew of me through Jim Brown, and so he wanted to meet me, and he came and visited me in the ward in the hospital. And so when it come time to go, the nurse told him that he'd have to leave. His name was Bill Colebrook. And he said, I'm not leaving. You're going to put me in the bed next to him. And by God, they had to. Which ended up for me a real blessing. Because there wasn't enough wheelchairs, and I couldn't put my leg down, and so I couldn't leave the bed or anything. There was no way to go. But we figured that out. I had put my leg in the brace underneath his arm and followed him all over the hospital on crutches. So the first time the doctor caught me in the PX without a wheelchair or anything else, he couldn't figure it out. How in the hell did I get there, you know? But anyway, I'd follow him on those crutches. We'd go have a few beers, and he'd take off running. And I'd have to keep up with the damn crutches, you know, with him running. An ornery son of a gun. One of my very best friends. Unfortunately, he's dead now. But that really was a break. And they shipped him off to Letterman up San Francisco. There's different type operations and stuff like that. Mine was all skin grafts and stuff like that, you know. And so I was in Dibble in Menlo Park. Eddie did come down to Menlo Park to visit me a few times. But they was making pedicles on us to hook us up. At that time, they made a pedicle on my side. It was just on my side, period, you know. Take split grafts off every place else and replace it. And they take the skin and make a tube out of it on your side. Then they would cut one end of the tube off and hook it to your hand. And so I was hooked up to my side like this. And so Bill come down, he was staying with the Browns up in Richmond when he wasn't in the hospital at Letterman. And so anyway, he come down to get me in the car, and we went up there, and Jack Brown, and he'd come back he was been a prisoner of war. He was captured in Normandy, but he got home. And the three of us were wrestling around, and unfortunately I give my hand a jerk like that, and the damn thing tore the stitches loose a little bit and started bleeding like hell. So they had to haul me all the way from Richmond back to the hospital. Of course, I told them I fell. Jim was killed in Bastogne. I found out when I was at Hammond. And Jack, of course, had been captured in Normandy. And anyway, getting together was really great, no matter what we put. Bob Brown could have killed all three of us. But anyway, I ended up, they moved me finally from Dibble to McCormick in Pasadena. And my dad lived in Pasadena, which made it really kind of nice. And So anyway, I was put into a body cast in Pasadena when they unhooked my hand from my side and put it down to my knee. They had to put me in a cast, and I was in that cast for 30 days, at least 30 days. And the only thing I had out of that hand was this arm and this much of this leg. And I'm telling you, there's nothing to be more uncomfortable than laying a plaster cast for 30 days. Every place itches, no way to scratch it, and everything like that, you know. So I thought I'd made up my mind that I was never going to have anybody have to wipe my tail anymore when I got out of that cast. But I made a real mistake. I was cut out of the cast, and I started to hop to the bathroom, and of course I passed out. So they had to part me back in the bed again anyway. But that was part of the hassle because I had to hop all the way to the hospital, to the toilet, because my hand was hooked up, you know. But anyway, got so I could hop anywhere. And so I was in the hospital until June 1947. From the 18th of September 44 until June 1947. And I was discharged from the hospital there in Pasadena. And they gave me a brace to wear. And I'm sort of kicking myself because I took the brace off the first day and put it in my grandmother's attic. And I think maybe my leg would be straight now if I'd have kept that brace on. But I thought if I kept the brace, it would make it weaker. That would get stronger if I had to use it, you know. But I don't know. I don't know if that made it crooked or not. But anyway, it's crooked. Oh, my mother came all the way from, she lived in Long Beach. My folks split up when I was 9. Anyway, she came up from Long Beach. I don't know how she got there. Bus, I guess. And she was a registered nurse. So she insisted that she wanted to look at my leg. You know, I'm used to this sort of thing, you know. Unfortunately, because it was her son that made all the difference in the world, she just fainted. I had told her it could have happened at a roller skating rink. So she wasn't prepared to see what she saw, I guess. But my dad and his new wife came up and visited me, you know, before Christmas. So I was in September, and I was back in Hammond General Hospital before Christmas. So the service really was pretty good with us in that respect.